Welcome to Banyen Books, Branches of Wisdom, celebrating the joy of bright ideas and heartful lifelong learning. Branches of Wisdom is a series of intimate conversations with the world's most influential authors and visionaries. We explore spirituality and the human mind, ecology and culture. Most episodes are recorded with a live audience. You can join our live events and submit questions to your favorite guests. Check out our upcoming schedule at banyen.com. Since 1970, Banyen Books has been a rich oasis at the crossroads of wisdom and philosophy, offering resources for humanity's evolving paths. We're a locally owned, independent bookstore in the heart of Vancouver's Kitsilano neighborhood. Visit us in person or shop online at banyen.com. Please subscribe, follow, like, and leave your reviews for the podcast. And now, enjoy. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Branches of Wisdom, the Banyen Books podcast and streaming event series. I'm your host, Ross McKeechee. Very excited today. We have two amazing guests, Dr. David Feinstein and Donna Eden. Before we speak with them, Banyen Books acknowledges that although we have people joining us from all over the world for these live streaming events, the physical location of Banyen Books and Sound is on the traditional and unceded territories of the Coast Salish peoples, including the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. Most of Banyen's podcasts and event series are free. We welcome your donation to keep these programs accessible for all. Just go ahead and click on the PayPal link in the show description below. Also, towards the end of our conversation today, we will take questions from our live audience. So go ahead and type that in the comments field on YouTube, and we'll get to as many of those questions as we can. David Feinstein, PhD, a clinical psychologist, has served on the faculty of the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine and has received 9 national awards for his books on consciousness and healing. Donna Eden is one of the most sought-after experts on energy medicine. She's treated over 10,000 individual clients and has taught hundreds of classes to standing room-only audiences worldwide. Together, David and Donna have built one of the world's largest and most vibrant organizations teaching the hands-on use of energy medicine. And they are the authors of the classic and authoritative book on the subject titled Energy Medicine. Their 1,600 certified practitioners are serving tens of thousands of clients and teaching hundreds of classes in the US, Canada, Latin America, Europe, Asia, and Australia. They jointly have been honored by the Infinity Foundation as the first couple to receive its annual Spirit Award for their contribution to the evolution of consciousness and its impact on society, and they have received the Pioneer Award for Energy Healing Leadership. Today, Dr. David Feinstein and Donna Eden are with Banyen Books in conversation about their new book, Tapping: Self-Healing with the Transformative Power of Energy Psychology. This is an authoritative new work that offers a vibrant answer to the psychological and spiritual challenges presented by a world in unprecedented distress. Through their extensive research and field-tested refinements on this method, Eden and Feinstein have emerged as top experts on this approach for self-development, combining the verified effectiveness of tapping with the best practices of psychotherapy. As cultural historian Dr. Jean Houston shares in her foreword, tapping is a stunning call to action at a time of desperate personal and collective need. If you'd like to learn more about Donna and David and their work, you can visit their website, edenmethod.com. Banyen community, please join me in a big, warm welcome for Dr. David Feinstein and Donna Eden.
Hi.
Thank you, Ross.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. It's really, really great to have you here. Thanks for taking the time.
Oh, we're really happy to be here and reach the people in Canada and
Yeah.
other places.
So the two of you co-authored a book on energy psychology in 2005 called The Promise of Energy Psychology. I'm just wondering, how have things changed since then? And what inspired you to follow up with this book?
Well, in 2005, the research was really minimal. It was just getting started. At this point, there are nearly 200 clinical trials, and more than 98% of them show that there is a effect that is beneficial, statistically significant in at least one of the areas that was being tracked. So there's really strong evidence. And in that research, we've also found out a lot about how it works. And so we have both research and an understanding of the mechanisms. And based on that, we realized that our 2005 book is really out of date. And then there are also more than 100 other books out there on energy psychology or EFT or tapping, all basically meaning the same thing. And we decided that what we could contribute that none of the other books did is to really embed the tapping practice into, as you mentioned, the best practices of psychotherapy. So if we were looking at anxiety or depression or addictions, we really looked at, okay, what does the field of psychology, clinical psychology, have to say about this particular condition? Now, how can we bring tapping into it? And for each one, we began with something very basic, like the depression chapter, for instance, starts with sadness. The addiction chapter starts with habit. And so we address it at the self-help level of habits, for instance, or sadness, or any of the other more everyday emotions. But then we bring it up to more complexity, where we are teaching people how to not just tap on a formula, on a script, but to really teach them to do the detective work so that what they are doing goes deeper and deeper. And then finally, in the last part of the chapter, we're encouraging people to only use this in conjunction with a therapist if, for instance, they have a lifetime of deep depression, or if they have a life-threatening addiction, or if they have a chronic anxiety. So the last part of each chapter tells the client, the reader, how to use tapping back home along with the supervision of a therapist, whether the therapist understands tapping or not. And if the therapist does understand that, we also are telling the therapist, here is how you can apply tapping when you're working with an addiction or anxiety or depression. So that's the ways that this book is really different from the earlier book and from most of the other books that are out there.
Right. And it's almost like a textbook. I mean, not as dense and hard to read as a textbook, but it's so in depth and detailed and practical. It's a really wonderful book. Donna, I wanted to ask you, because you share your story early in the book about how David introduced you to energy psychology when he started practicing it, and you were surprised by its effectiveness while just using one energy system. Can you explain your experiences and the difference between energy psychology and energy medicine?
Yes, well, energy medicine uses energy as the medicine for whatever is going on in your body or in your psyche. And and I love working with energy, and I love sharing it with people so that people can know that they can be empowered too, to help themselves and take care of their illnesses and their pains and their psyche. So energy psychology, working with just the meridians, which I love meridians, but it's just one of 9 systems that I like to work with. But what I saw as soon as like David or somebody else began tapping, first of all, I'd see the energy pulsing, like if it's here, it would pulse all the way up to the brain. And it was amazing. It was amazing. You'd also see an electric spark in the beginning, and then and you'd see it travel just like, the heartbeat pumps the blood and things. This 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 pulsing, this tapping really works with the energy to move and shift things very deeply. And if you shift the energy through tapping, you change everything. You change your consciousness. You change the programming that you've been programmed with. I mean, it is amazing and it is wonderful.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask too, because I'm going to pull a quote here. You wrote this in the book, and I want to ask you a question. You said, "I've never defined myself as a psychotherapist, yet over the decades, I've worked intimately with more than 10,000 people in 90-minute sessions on their personal problems and emotional challenges. While I'm always happy to share my thoughts about their situation, what has been most helpful was working with their energies, which told me at least as much about their story as did their words." Can you explain a bit, how do our energies tell us so much about our emotions and psychology? How
Well,
can working with those energies help shift things?
I mean, energy is all there is, first of all. I mean, we think we're solid, but we are these lattice works of energy fields. And energy is so intelligent, and it absolutely knows how to you know work all of the systems in our bodies. It knows how to do everything automatically. And for me, and for many other people too, energy is, I think it's the best medicine there is. It is the most natural medicine. It is, it healed me. And that's how I got into all of this. And
Why
it,
don't you say a little bit more about how it healed you? And you've been talking about how you see energy, but most people don't see energy. So maybe
okay, well, that's always a little bit hard because I want people to, I don't want anybody to think I'm special because I see energy. I really believe that everybody, when they are born, sees energy. I mean, if you've ever picked up a baby and that baby is looking all around your head, it's looking at the aura around your head. And, but the problem is if nobody talks about the energy, and we live in a culture where nobody knows much about it, then that baby has so much to learn that it lets that one slide, and it goes away. But I've been to cultures where people did see energy, where it was just much more natural because they'd known it from birth, and their parents kept it alive and other people kept it alive. And I just happened to be in a family where you kept it alive. And so my brother, my sister, everybody but my dad could see energy. And we didn't know how he functioned.
Wow.
because I mean, it is, and I'm sure it's what our ancient ancestors used to help them survive, to feel it, to know it, to see it, and make sense of it more and more. And so many systems have come up, thousands upon thousands. I think the Chinese medicine is as at least 5,000 years old in writing. It's like it's down in print. And now they have found, when they can measure like meridians with instruments, they found that they were exactly right. Well, how did they know that? They either saw it or they felt it. They intuitively knew it. And so one of the things that happens with people when they start working with energy is they often, always their senses come more alive. And one of the senses is seeing. So a lot of people do start seeing energy again.
Right. Now, this brings me back to David, because we need to talk a little bit about skepticism, particularly from the medical field, the psychology field, and how to address that. And David, your story of how you came to tapping started with a lot of skepticism, didn't it?
It sure did. And why not? What could this tapping possibly have to do with anything psychological? I mean, just tapping on the skin. And so I got into energy medicine through marriage. I was already kind of skeptical about things like Donna saying that energy has memory, energy has intelligence, those kinds of statements. I just spent the first 7 years of my career teaching in the medical school at Johns Hopkins, and we had a very specific definition of energy, and it was not that. And so, so when Donna says, we're not solid, we're made of energy, that Einstein understood that E equals mc squared. There's this relationship between mass and energy, and you convert one to the other. Molecules, which are the building blocks of mass, are actually largely energy structures with electrons circling around these protons. And so I didn't have trouble with that, but the idea that it was intelligent, the idea that it had memory, was totally off of my radar. And so we had really interesting discussions in the early parts of our relationship. But in about 96, Donna asked me to help her write her book. And when I was at Hopkins, I was assigned the project of evaluating new psychotherapies. And so I became very good at asking tough questions like you are, and to really get to the essence of what someone is saying, what they believe, and finding out if it is a real innovation or if it's just repackaging old stuff or if it's just more fluff. And so as I wasn't sure what it was going to be like to really push Donna on her work, but I already was kind of predetermined that there's more to it, because I was seeing people come to her and really get help from difficult medical conditions. So I was coming in with a really open mind, and I couldn't ask a question that she didn't have a logical answer to. I found out that her work is really empirical, in the sense that empirical means observe, experiment. And I could not observe what she could observe. I couldn't see the energies. I couldn't see the chakras and the meridians and the aura. But if we assume that that is accurate when she talks about those, and she can demonstrate that, then what she does when she works on somebody is she'll see where the energy is blocked or off. She'll do an intervention. That's the experiment. Then she'll observe. Did it work? Did it not work? Did it get the energy flowing? No, it didn't. Okay, well, then we'll try. Maybe it's in the chakras and not the meridians. And so we'll try over here with the chakra. Did that work? Yeah, that worked. Okay, so I really, in those 2 years, came to say, okay, there's really something to this. And we wrote the book. Then right about after the book was finished, I was doing...
And that was energy medicine.
Yeah,
energy medicine, right?
Yeah, and so where Donna's the main author, I'm the with author. And I was doing a supervision group for psychotherapists in Ashland, Oregon. And one of my group members, one of the therapists, was beginning to study this tapping stuff. And she brings it in, starts talking about it in the group. And I'm going, oh my God, how, really, how does that work? And there was at that time absolutely no research. Psychologists pay attention to research. And so I was polite. I didn't put her down or anything, but I just kind of tried to steer her away from talking about this stuff in my group. And when you judge something really harshly like that, it often comes back to bite you. So here I am talking to you, advocating this method. So the book comes out, we go on the road, we start teaching workshops, and about 15% of the people that come to Donna's classes are therapists. And so they start asking me about this new energy psychology tapping stuff. And I didn't know anything about it, really. I just had my judgments, and I chose not to talk about those until I learned something. And so I was ready to learn something. And just then we did a weekend workshop, and one of the participants comes up to me at the end of it at lunchtime and says, I'm a psychologist, and a group of us get together every Sunday night, or every one month, on Sunday nights. And so this month, the program is on this tapping, and maybe you'd like to come as my guest. And so I said, okay, I guess this is my opportunity to learn something. If there are psychologists interested enough in it to study it, there must be something worth at least looking at. So I show up, and it's at somebody's house, and there's about a dozen of us in the living room, and there is the therapist that has learned about tapping. And the way that he set it up was he invited the other group members to provide him with a client they're having difficulty with. And so one of the other psychologists brings in his patient, and she has an extreme phobia of closed spaces. She's claustrophobic. And the way they set it up was the therapist that is demonstrating the tapping is in the middle of the circle with the woman. They're facing each other on chairs, and everybody else has got a circle around them. And he starts talking to her, and I'm very comfortable with what he's saying because I'm, kind of there with my skepticism hat, but also just interested. And he starts asking her about the history of her fear of closed spaces. And so that seemed like a really sane way to begin. And he then asks her about her history with treatment. And she's been through a few therapists and just hasn't gotten any help. And that was reasonable. Then he asks her to imagine being in an elevator and give a rating of 0 to 10 of the amount of distress it causes to imagine being in the elevator. And we do know that just imagining something also gets the brain systems into activation. So the amygdala can go into a threat response just from imagining it. And I'm familiar with that because that is used in a lot of different therapies. And I was using it in systematic desensitization. It's called a SUD rating, subjective use of distress. And so she rates it at a 10. And so I'm comfortable all the way to that point. But then he starts doing these strange incantations of tapping on the skin and saying, fear of elevators, fear of elevators, fear of elevators. I'm going, oh my God, she is just giving herself post-hypnotic suggestions to be more afraid of elevators. This is almost malpractice. Do I have to report this guy? It was just like, but after about 2 minutes of that and doing other really strange things like moving her eyes and humming and counting, and he asked her to imagine being in an elevator again and give it a rating, and it's down to a 7. Oh, okay, that was interesting. I wonder what happened. And then another round of about 2 minutes and rates it again, and it's down to a 5. And I'm thinking, okay, this is probably some version of the Stockholm effect, where she has developed some affection for him and doesn't want to embarrass him in front of his colleagues. So then she does another round, and it's back up to a 7. And I'm thinking, okay, I knew it wouldn't work. It's just these normal variations in front of a group that must be happening. But the therapist says, well, when it went up from a 5 to a 7, what was going on in your mind? And she said, oh, well, I had a memory I haven't had for decades. And I was about 8, and I was playing with my older brothers and their friends. And we had this big appliance box, like a refrigerator would come in. And one of us would get in it, and the others would push it. And it was great fun. And when it was my turn, they pushed it up against a wall, and the only flaps that were open were pushed against the wall. And her brothers then leave with some disparaging remarks and teasing remarks, and she is left there in the absolute darkness, and she cannot get out. She's not big enough to actually maneuver her way out of it. And she doesn't know how long she was there, but it seemed like a long time, and she was screaming at the top of her lungs. And so as she's describing it, she's clearly up to a 10, and the therapist just keeps engaged with her. And finally, as she's in this state of panic, he has her start tapping, not even using the words at the time, because she clearly doesn't need the words to activate her. And as she taps, it goes down a little bit. She starts breathing more normally. Then he's able to introduce words as she continues to tap, words that suggest to her that she's safe now, that it's not happening now, and until she's able to imagine that horrible memory and not have any reaction. So it's a 0. And he doesn't stop there either. He goes to other aspects of the situation, such as her being really angry and resentful towards her brothers, feeling betrayed, and all the different kind of spin-offs from that experience, and brings them each one down to a 0. Then they return to the elevators, and it's down to a 3 without having worked anymore on elevators. And they quickly get that down to a 0. And well, so she's in a room full of psychologists, and psychologists like to test things. So somebody suggests, well, we've got a coat closet here in this house. What if she gets in it? And so she agrees. The therapist is very sensitive about it and tells her that if she feels any anxiety at all, she's not trying to prove anything to anybody. Just open the door. We don't want to re-traumatize you. And so she closes the door, and we're all watching, and about half a minute goes by and it's just silent, and a minute goes by, and it's a fairly long time to just be waiting. And you can imagine a dozen therapists just kind of hovering around this closet door, and maybe 2 minutes goes by. It felt to me like maybe 3 minutes, a long time. And finally, the therapist that's doing the demonstration knocks on the door and says, "Are you okay?" She opens the door, comes out, and she's exuberant. She hasn't had this experience in her whole life where she's really comfortable in a closed space. And so people start congratulating her, congratulating the therapist, everybody except me. And I'm going, I see what's going on. I see what's going on. This must be a social psychology experiment on how gullible psychologists can be. This must be somebody's dissertation. But it wasn't. And so now, 23 years later, I've had the equivalent of that experience many, many times. And it's not always a one session cure, but an amazing amount can happen in one session. And with deeper issues, addictions, chronic anxiety, it's multiple sessions, PTSD. It's multiple sessions, but a lot can happen with a single tapping session.
And there's a lot of research now on the effectiveness of this. Before we get into that, I also want to bring Donna in and ask, with your energy medicine, has there been a lot of research done on that over the years now as well? Or is that something that's still kind of
not nearly as much, because we're not basically psychologists who want the research. So we just want to do the work. We want to get people well. But I do know that we do need some research because I'm very sure the next century, energy medicine, energy psychology are just going to be a natural part of regular medicine. They're not. Regular Western medicine just can't be so isolated, and more physicians and nurses are bringing energy techniques in. So what was the question?
How much research has been done, basically?
There's a lot of research in various segments of energy medicine, but in terms of Donna's approach, we're just starting to do research. We're just getting serious about it, because the conventional healthcare will not take us seriously until we can really demonstrate what's done. But it's more difficult in energy medicine to research, because there's so many more variables that you have to control for. So it's great that energy psychology has kind of jumped ahead of the pack, because psychologists know how to do research on emotional problems, and I think energy medicine will follow behind.
Right, it's kind of paving the way, opening that door more.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Just a reminder to our live audience, go ahead and type in your questions for David and Donna, and we'll get to some of those towards the last 15 minutes of our conversation. And I have naively agreed to be the demonstrating person for this technique. And before we do that, I just want to lead with a question, David, and then maybe we can do a demo for the audience. So you write the following: Energy psychology interventions at their core align your body with your psyche's impulse toward your greatest potentials. Coded into your psyche is not only the design for your highest possibilities, but also the deep motivation, the call for actualizing them. Tapping protocols help bring your potentials into being. These protocols have two components. We've already touched on them, but just to make it really clear for everybody, the first is they stimulate selected acupuncture points by tapping them. And the second is they include the simultaneous use of words or imagery. So I'm wondering if maybe now we could give everybody a bit of a demonstration.
Right. I'm happy to do that.
Okay.
Of course, since I can't see the participants, I can't really begin to do any kind of a deep therapeutic experience, but I can involve people even while we're working with you. So what I'd like the listeners to do, if you're comfortable doing it, is to select something from your past that feels unresolved. That is because what happens is that when we have experiences that we've not really worked through, that tends to be carried into our current life. And so if you can take something that is fairly minor, I'm suggesting that you not go into major traumas, not go into anything involving abuse, involving an accident where you're physically injured, but more something like where something kind of hurt your feelings a little bit, something where maybe you lost some confidence, maybe you gave a talk to your class and people didn't receive it very well, or there was a time that your mother or father had unjustly criticized you, or something more at that level. And what I'm going to ask you to do, I'm also going to ask Ross to do, and that is to bring it to mind. So Ross, go ahead and bring your issue to mind, and everybody that wants to participate in this, bring it to mind and give a rating of the amount of distress it causes in your mind or body right now. 0 being no distress at all, 10 being extreme distress.
I would say this one for me is about a 6 or a 7.
Okay, a 6 or a 7. And I'd encourage everybody in the audience to write down the number and to remind yourself of the scene you went to. The scene you went to. And if you haven't gotten it yet, make the scene very explicit. So it's concrete. It's an actual memory. It's not a theme like I was criticized. It's a moment that you were criticized. Okay, and now what you're going to do is just set that aside, and you're going to tap along with Ross as if his issue were your issue. Okay, you're going to do exactly what he does. This is called borrowing the benefits. And the research shows that by doing that, it actually will also address your issue, even though you're not focusing on your issue. Okay, did that instruction sound clear, Ross?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so now all we're going to do is work with Ross, and you'll be supporting him by working on his issue. So Ross, want to just give us a quick thumbnail of what your issue is?
It's a sense of overwhelm, like carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. Like, oh, there's so many tasks, so much to do. It's all too much.
Okay, great. And it was a 6 or 7, so it's pretty high. It's a real issue in your life. So the first thing we do involves establishing some acceptance at an energetic level. And so rather than tapping, we're going to actually massage some energy points. So what you do is you find points on your chest, that are sore. And everybody has them, because just living in a body, that The energy starts to get clogged. And if you're having trouble finding them where your shoulder connects to where your arm connects to your shoulder is often a very good one. Okay, and everybody out there, just find your own. You don't have to use the same one Ross uses. You got it?
Yeah, those are tight spots.
Okay, good. Okay, so these are neurolymphatic points that tend to get clogged in everyday use of your body. And by combining the massaging of them with some words that I'll give you, that releases the energy and it embeds the words more deeply into your psyche. Okay, so
Now, should I be sticking with one good spot once I find it?
stick with one.
Stick with ones. Okay, I'll stick with this spot here.
Okay, great. So these are very good ones. So as you continue to rub these, and you don't do it so hard as to hurt yourself or risk bruising yourself, but hard enough that you really feel it. You really feel the soreness, and and just repeat after me. I'll say a phrase, then Ross will repeat it, and as Ross repeats it, everybody in the audience, please repeat it out loud. Okay, even if somebody else in the room thinks it's strange that you're doing this, repeat it out loud. Okay.
Now, David, should I have my eyes closed, open? Does it matter?
Right now, because you're following me, I think keep your eyes open.
Okay.
So even though I feel the weight of the world on my shoulders,
even though I feel the weight of the world on my shoulders.
And now move your hands to over your heart chakra. I deeply love myself and accept my feelings.
I deeply love myself and accept my feelings.
Good. And twice more, we're going to do the same thing. So even though I feel the weight of the world on my shoulders,
even though I feel the weight of the world on my shoulders,
I deeply love myself.
I deeply love myself
and accept my feelings.
And accept my feelings.
Even though I feel the weight of the world on my shoulders.
Even though I feel the weight of the world on my shoulders.
I deeply love myself.
I deeply love myself.
And accept my feelings.
And accept my feelings.
And I see the humor in thinking that the weight of the world is on my shoulders.
And I see the humor in thinking that the weight of the world is on my shoulders.
And now we're going to start tapping. We start at the top of the head and you tap, again, not enough to hurt yourself, but firmly. The weight of the world.
The weight of the world.
And now inside the eyebrows, so just an inside corner of the eyebrows, I've been carrying it on my shoulders.
I've been carrying it on my shoulders.
Now on the side of the eyes, and man, is that heavy.
And man, is that heavy.
I've been carrying the weight of the world.
I've been carrying the weight of the world.
Trying to solve all the problems.
Trying to solve all the problems. I'm tapping on my upper lip.
Yeah. And now tapping on your lower lip.
Lower lip.
And that's why I do these broadcasts.
And that's why I do these broadcasts.
I get all the experts.
I get all the experts.
On solving the problems of the world.
On solving the problems of the world.
And now right under the collarbone corners.
Okay, tapping there.
Yeah. And all these experts.
And all these experts.
And I really try to do good interviews.
I really try to do good interviews.
But the world's still a mess.
But the world's still a mess.
And so I feel it even heavier on my shoulders.
And so I feel it even heavier on my shoulders. Now I'm tapping just with one hand?
Right. It can be two hands.
Okay.
It's right over the heart chakra.
Okay.
The world's still a mess.
The world's still a mess.
And I think it's my fault.
I think it's my fault.
Because I have this platform.
Because I have this platform.
I have this great opportunity,
I have this great opportunity.
and the world's still a mess.
And the world's still a mess.
What's wrong with me? Just sides of the rib cage.
What's wrong with me?
Why can't I be more effective?
Why can't I be more effective?
My shoulders are just feeling so heavy.
My shoulders are just feeling so heavy.
I think I'll just tap on my shoulders right now, even though they're not points. I'll tap on my shoulders right now, even though they're not points.
Yeah. Oh.
Now back to the side of my rib cage.
Uh-huh.
And the weight on my shoulders is not getting lighter.
The weight on my shoulders is not getting lighter.
And now you tap between your knee and your hip on the side on the seam on the outside of your pants, between your knee and your hip. I wonder how I figured out that it was all my responsibility.
I wonder how I figured out that it was all my responsibility.
I wonder if anybody conveyed that to me. We're just going like this. I wonder if anybody conveyed that to me when I was younger.
I wonder if anybody conveyed that to me when I was younger.
I may be having a memory right now.
I may be having a memory right now.
True or false?
True.
Okay, so tap right here between your little finger and your ring finger. Below it is a ridge. So tap with 4 fingers on that ridge and name the memory. Just describe the memory. You don't have to describe it in detail, but just enough so you just kind of know what it is.
Well, it's just the attitude from both of my parents of just constant work, always tasking, always busy, so much to do. I just want to get this done is the phrase that comes to mind. Like, it's constant.
I just want to get this done.
I just want to get this done.
I just want to get all the world's problems solved.
I just want to get all the world's problems solved.
Then I can relax.
Then I can relax.
Other side, other hand. But I can't relax until then.
But I can't relax until then.
My parents made that very clear to me.
My parents made that very clear to me.
And I try to be a good person, a good son.
I try to be a good person, a good son.
So I just keep plugging away.
So I just keep plugging away.
Interview after interview.
Interview after interview.
I keep hoping, will this be the one?
I keep hoping, will this be the one?
So continue to tap, and now we're going to do something totally different. And this is to engage different parts of the brain, so it won't have the same kind of talking. Rather, it's called the integration into exercise. And with your head straight, just like it is, you're going to close your eyes. Everybody do this along with us. Open your eyes and look down to the right and look down to the left.
Keeping my head straight, just with my eyes.
Head straight. Thank you. Yes. Now, keeping your head straight, circle your eyes in one direction. Good. And the other direction. Good. And now, continuing to tap, you're going to hum the first stanza of Row, Row, Row Your Boat. Great. Now count to 5 slowly.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
And row, row, row your boat again, just like before. Good. Now you're going to keep your head straight again and look down, sending the energy out your eyes, just sending energy out your eyes into the floor. And then very slowly, you're going to move your eyes upward so that you're looking at the wall, sending the energy out into the wall, looking up, 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 till you're looking at the ceiling, sending the energy out into the ceiling. And now we're going to resume the earlier format of tapping where you start on the top of your head and all the weight of the world.
All the weight of the world.
All that weight.
All that weight.
Has been on my shoulders.
Has been on my shoulders.
And my shoulders are really getting tired.
And my shoulders are really getting tired.
It may be time to change this arrangement.
It may be time to change this arrangement.
I'm really ready to change this arrangement.
I'm really ready to change this arrangement.
Of course, I know it's not really my responsibility.
Of course, I know it's not really my responsibility.
But it feels like it is.
But it feels like it is.
True or false?
True.
It feels like it's my responsibility.
It feels like it's my responsibility.
To save the world.
To save the world.
And I'm just one guy.
I'm just one guy.
And I'm really actually quite pleased with the contribution I make.
I'm really quite pleased with the contribution I make.
But I'm not pleased with the world's response.
But I'm not pleased with the world's response. Yeah.
It's still a mess.
It's still a mess.
It's really a dilemma for me.
It's really a dilemma for me.
The parents I've internalized.
The parents I've internalized.
I want them to be proud of me.
I want them to be proud of me.
But I can't show the goods.
But I can't show the goods.
Of a peaceful, happy world.
To the people, happy world.
The peaceful, happy world.
The peaceful, happy world.
Really? What's so hard about that?
Really? What's so hard about that?
I guess some people might say I have high standards.
I guess some people might say I have high standards.
But I really feel this responsibility.
But I really feel this responsibility.
If not me, who?
If not me, who?
If not when, now. If not now, when?
If not now, when?
I know what the sages tell me.
I know what the sages tell me.
Side of the legs. So I've been running this program for years now inside my head.
So I've been running this program for years now inside my head.
And the world's still a mess.
And the world's still a mess.
In fact, it's getting worse.
In fact, it's getting worse.
So it's time for me to rearrange my relationship with it, with the mess.
It's time for me to rearrange my relationship with
the mess.
The mess.
Yeah. And I can do that.
I can do that.
I've just shined a flashlight on the problem.
Shine a flashlight on the problem.
So I can see where I'm hung up with it.
So I can see where I'm hung up with it.
And the tapping has sent that insight into my nervous system.
And the tapping has sent that insight into my nervous system.
Okay, so everybody just relax. And people in the audience, you don't have to do anything right now. Just listen to me give Ross the instructions. So Ross, I'd like you to go into the exact same scene or thoughts that you originally rated as a 6 or 7 and give them a rating now, the amount of distress you feel in your mind or body right now as you visit this.
It's funny. It's so strange. I feel actually like a joyfulness about that same thing now. A certain like gratitude, actually. Like, wow, I get to do this.
Great. Excellent. So thank you for having the courage, Ross, to just do this sight unseen without knowing what I was going to put you through. And I'm really happy about what you just reported. Really happy.
Yeah, thank you so much, David. Wow, I wasn't expecting to get to the laughter, like to feel that kind of humor right away. And so, can you tell us like what's actually going on inside of us?
So
what's going on
before
inside?
we do that, let's ask the audience to now go into their memory, and really close your eyes, go into your memory. Exact same memory, same scene that you rated before, and give it a rating of 0 to 10, the amount of distress it brings to your mind or body right now. Okay. And if you would, just put into the little chat box the numbers. So put in the numbers like from 8 to a 6 or 10 to a 3 or whatever the number is. Just put that in, and Russ, can you or someone kind of just read some of them just so that we get an idea?
For sure. First, I can read one person, Aaron, said initially that I am tired, exhausted physically and emotionally. That was the thing that they were working with. So now we'll just wait for some people to put in their ratings of where they're at now.
Okay, so we'll give them some time to do it. And you were about to ask a question.
Yeah, I wanted to ask. So I could feel the shift in my body when we're doing that, but what's actually happening in my brain and my nervous system? What's going on when we do that?
It's really interesting. There are different explanations for it. Donna has a more energetic explanation. I have a more neurological explanation. And so here's how I understand it. First of all, certain points on the skin, there's several hundred acupuncture points depending on the system you look at, but we were using only a dozen of them. And acupuncture points have different electrical properties than other areas of the skin. Specifically, they have more conductivity, they conduct electricity, and they also correspondingly have less resistance to electrical conduction. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that acupuncture points and other points as well have these large molecules that when this very specific type of molecule that when pressure is applied to it, pressure is applied to this molecule, it converts the pressure, the mechanical pressure, into electricity. So that's the second step, is that that an electrical charge is created by the tapping, and that is called mechanosensory transduction. It's not a term from energy psychology, it's a term from physics and biology. So it's called piezoelectricity, and it converts mechanical pressure into electricity. Then the next thing that happens is that whatever you were thinking while doing the tapping, the part of the brain that got engaged attracts the signals that are created by the tapping. So these impulses go to the part of the brain. So when you're feeling the weight on your shoulders, there's parts of your limbic system, your emotional system, that is registering that emotion of the overwhelm, how hard it is. And what the tapping does is it sends, so now we have an electrical signal that knows where it wants to go. It wants to go to those parts of the brain. Where does it go? It's what Donna said. It goes through the connective tissue. And the connective tissue happens to be where the acupuncture meridians are embedded. So, and they have a lot of collagen, which is a semiconductor, which means that that electrical impulse shoots right up to where it's needed. And where it's needed depends on what you were thinking, and it gets there very quickly rather than having to go neuron to synapse to neuron through the nervous system. It goes right there. And acupuncture points are known in acupuncture as doing what is needed. It's kind of like they have a holistic perspective. So when you're thinking about something where the brain is getting overcharged, like say it's fear, say the woman who was afraid of closed spaces. So she thinks of the elevator and her amygdala goes into a threat response, but then you're sending these signals that deactivate the threat response. So it goes down, 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 down until she's able to think about being in an elevator without any threat response. So she is no longer phobic of elevators. She's able to talk about it calmly. It doesn't mean that she can't remember elevators. It doesn't mean that she can't remember what happened with her brothers, but she can remember it without reliving it. And so that's what happens. There's other parts of the brain that also get engaged, such as the prefrontal cortex, which is involved. So you're there trying to solve the problems of the world. So that part of your brain is also active, and it's also tracking the signals, and those signals then activate that part of the brain. They make that part of the brain come online more, so that you're more effective with problem solving. That part of the brain also is involved with stress management, so you become more effective with stress management. So those are the two things that these signals do: is they deactivate areas of the brain that have become hyperactive, and they activate areas of the brain that could use more blood, basically more electrical stimulation. And so then there's another phase of that, which is called reconsolidation, where your old mental model, like your model about having to save the world, gets challenged, so that you are thinking about having to save the world, but you're not having the same reaction of, oh my God, I got to try harder, work, run faster. So that mental model gets transformed in that moment. I sort of saw the moment that it happened. And it's because I could see that I was able to really push it a little further than I would have if you were slower to respond. But I pushed it further. And so now the mental model shifts, because the mental model gets activated. What happens in your body is not what you expected. And so there's that moment of surprise. That was when you smiled. You were starting to feel a little bit. Yeah. And so that's the reconsolidation moment, and that will last. That I predict that, even though you might have moments of sit back and you might be watching what's happening on television and think, oh my God, but there's something very, very resilient in that change. So that's basically my explanation of the mechanisms of it.
It's wonderful, really wonderful. And we've had quite a few people report in on the changes they experienced. So Kiki said from 7 to a warm glow to no number.
Great.
Yeah. Silverfin said from a 7 to a 3. Susan said from a 6 to a 1. Karen said mine went down to a 0, and now I view the scenario in third person versus first person.
That's great.
Is that a typical response?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Donna said from a 7 to a 2, thank you. Kishiril said I went from a 6 or 7 to a 1 or 0. Maria said I went from an 8 to a 5, and the painful spot on my chest is no more. Aaron says, and one of the points on my chest is not as sore either, and went from an 8 to a 2. Great. And then the final one, S. Stewart said from a 5 to a 1, and the situation I saw to start has now become a blur, nothing.
Mm-hmm. So that's great. You have a wonderful audience. But I'll also say, if for anybody, sometimes it goes up. I went from a 7 to a 10, like the woman in the claustrophobic, because sometimes as you do the tapping so that it releases a layer, you find out that under that layer, there was something else. And so if it did go up for you, what I encourage you to do is to tap on what came up, because that will can very quickly, that's kind of the key. You have to work through that. And so I'm really happy with how many people did have very large improvements, but also just to let people know that if you did go up, that's also possible.
And that's an example of how energy holds memories. It's like it is in the energy that the memory comes up. And what I have seen for 40 years of working on people's bodies, there's often memories that come up in the body when you start working with the energy.
Wow. We're getting close to our time. Do you have time to take one question from the audience before?
Sure.
Yeah. There's a question here from Siddika that says, What kinds of difficult medical issues does energy medicine and or tapping resolve?
Well, I'll start. Really, for many, many things and very serious illnesses, it can resolve. And for other things, it just opens the way so the energy gets better and better and better. For myself, I had multiple sclerosis and I wasn't expected to walk again. And that was 40 some years ago. And now, I mean, one of the great things that happens is you like aging better and better and better. I mean, life feels better the older you get. You come to so much peace, and if you feel like you're empowered to take care of some of the stuff that comes up in your own body, I mean, life just gets better. You like being older.
How old are you?
I'm 81.
What? Holy cow. You don't look 81.
Thank
I
you.
am so proud of my daughter. But it's a great question because, like Donna said, she thinks that in the future, energy medicine and conventional medicine are going to work hand in hand.
Yes.
But I mean, conventional medicine can do amazing things, but to really get the energy working with the treatment can speed things up tremendously, increase the amount of success, increase the success rate, and also along the way, the energy medicine often does the cure without even needing any other intervention.
I mean, how many times when I had my practice, somebody was coming to me to sort of prepare their body for a terrible surgery that they were going to go through. And then when the time came for the surgery, they didn't need the surgery. So it is amazing what energy can do.
Yeah. So what you guys are talking about is not an either or, which often is where people's minds go from one extreme to the other. You're suggesting it's a mutually supportive process between medicine and energy medicine and psychology and energy psychology.
Yeah. And I think what's a little surprising to me is how much just the tapping, because, with the energy medicine, as Donna said, she's working with 9 different energy systems. She's working with the aura, the meridians, the chakras, and 6 others. And so with the tapping, you're just really working with the meridians. And yet many, many physical problems have either been resolved or at least given a great jump with just the tapping. And so that's a whole other area where tapping, I think tapping is mostly really for psychological kinds of issues.
Except, there are, many years ago, before energy psychology came around, I would often tap on the body for pain. And it was really successful. And it turns out that thousands of years ago, some of the first writings on any kind of dental care, they tapped on different places on the body for pain, for dental problems.
Wow. Okay. Right. We're coming to our time here, and I just want to say what a delight it's been speaking with both of you. I learned a lot and had a lot of fun, and the comments from our live audience indicate the same. Folks, we've been speaking with Dr. David Feinstein and Donna Eden about their new book, which is called Tapping: Self-Healing with the Transformative Power of Energy Psychology. It's a very wonderful book for lay people and for professionals to implement in their lives or in their practice. And I want to thank our live audience for their participation, questions. Thank Jacob Steele, our producer. Thank both of you. And I just want to leave you. Is there any parting words, anything you want to tell folks about, any ways they can engage with you, things like that?
Well, what it's all about, what our careers are about, is self-empowerment. And so that's why we wrote the book. We wrote the book so that you can have a better life. And That's what we want. That's the weight we carry on our shoulders, is that we're aware that there are people that are in patterns in their life that are really hurting them, really painful, that they don't need, that there's ways out. And so that's what we really want to leave people with.
I just would like to say, it is your birthright to know how to take care of your own energies and your health and your psychological, mental health. And so, learn about energy.
Yeah, and we're really happy, Ross. Thank you so much for really bringing attention to the book. We worked on it for 2.5 years, and we really, really dedicated it to making a difference in people's lives. And so we're glad you're bringing it to your audience.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's been a delight.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us for Branches of Wisdom, a podcast of Banyen Books and Sound, Canada's spiritual and healing resource since 1970. Our podcast producer is Jacob Steele. The show is edited by Abdo Habani. Watch all our conversations on YouTube by searching for Banyen Books, or listen on your favorite podcast platform. Please subscribe, follow, like, and leave your reviews and comments. We love to hear from you. For all our live events, books, and more, visit us at banyen.com.